Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dancing with Orpheus. My name is Deborah Fox, and I'm the director of Pegasus Early Music based in Rochester, New York. The music you've been listening to is the finale from Monteverdi's L'Orfeo from 1607, as performed by Gabriel Garrido and his ensemble. Actually, today, it turns out, is the day that this piece premiered in 1607. It was February 24th, 1607. So it's appropriate that we're talking about Monteverdi's Orfeo, which is the piece that we will be presenting this summer in Rochester in August. And this series, Echoes of Orpheus, is designed to give you a look into Monteverdi's Orfeo, the music of the time, the dance of the time, stories about Orpheus, hearing some more concerts, hearing about our production. It's an ongoing series that will lead us up to the presentation, to the opera performances in August. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Peggy Murray, our presenter. Peggy is a dancer, a scholar, and a teacher. She's a former ballet and jazz dancer, but now she is dedicated to historical dance. She works extensively with Renaissance and Baroque dance, and she studies the role and development of dancing in Europe and the Americas during the colonial period. She's in great demand as a choreographer, and she's been a faculty member for the Amherst and Madison Early Music Festivals. She holds a PhD in interdisciplinary arts from Ohio University, and she's performed and taught all over the United States, in Mexico, Colombia, Peru, and Argentina as well. You've seen her on our concert stage performing French Baroque music, French Baroque dance in our Sun King show, and South and Latin American dance in our Fandango show in the last few years. So we've asked her here today to help set the stage for our opera production. Peggy is the choreographer for the show, and we've been looking into dance at the time of Monteverdi and figuring out how it fits into the opera. And I think as background, it's helpful to know a little bit about dance of the time, which she's going to give you. I just want to remind you, if you're logged into YouTube, you can enter your comments and questions in the chat box below your screen, and we'll keep an eye out for those and get to them at the end of Peggy's presentation. The series, Echoes of Orpheus, is presented with support from the Rochester Area Community Foundation, the Gouvernet Arts Fund at the Community Foundation, and with a Restart New York grant from the New York State Council on the Arts. And we are very grateful for all that funding that makes these extra presentations possible. So I think you're going to enjoy what you're about to hear and see and do. And here's Peggy.
Thanks so much, Deb. It's great to be here, and I'm really excited about the coming summer. As you know, this summer, Pegasus Early Music is planning to bring to Rochester audiences Monteverdi's L'Orfeo, a work recognized as the first good example of a full through-sung opera from 1607. I'll be choreographing the production, so I wanted to share with you a bit about how dancing fit into operas, how we know about the dancing of this period, what the dances were like, And I'll also invite you to try some moves from Italian dances from precisely the time of l'Orfeo. Feel free to post questions in the chat as we go, and we'll answer them at the end. So, how did dancing fit into operas? Well, the earliest operas were experiments in musical theater, combining poetry, music, and dance in various ways. Dance played an important role in opera from the earliest days of Monteverdi and peers, right up until the late 18th century. In the late 18th century, ballet and opera began to peel apart and establish largely independent genres. But before this, dance helped emphasize what was going on in the opera, or it could create a diversion from what was going on. It could be merely decorative, or it could directly advance the action and plot. Period libretti and musical scores from these early works offer sparse clues as to where in operas the dances fell, sometimes within the action of the narrative, and sometimes they were confined to between-act intermedi, or interludes, short, often unrelated skits with music and dances that were inserted between the acts. It was not uncommon for dance music to have been separated from the main musical score. Dances were rehearsed separately from vocal music, so sections of the score might have been taken apart for those purposes. Also, dance music was sometimes composed by people other than the main composers of the works. Dancing master choreographers were known to have composed music for dances that were sometimes later inserted. So what do we know about the case of Monteverdi's l'Orfeo? Some of the music in the score is labeled ballo or balletto, meaning dance, but that doesn't mean these were the only pieces that were dance, and no choreographies or precise descriptions of the dances have been preserved. Therefore, to imagine the original dances of l'Orfeo, we need to look to evidence of other productions around the same time and place, but also to what we know of the nature of dancing at this time. And how do we know about the dancing of this period? Well, it happens that at the turn of the 17th century marks a really rich period for written dance sources in Italy. I should point out that this period in music marks the beginning of the Baroque, but in dance, the style and technique presented in these sources has much in common with earlier Renaissance dance characteristics. Bigger Baroque changes in dance are represented in later dance sources, scant sources from the mid-17th century and several at the turn of the 18th. Our most important sources from the late 16th and early 17th centuries, that is, the most complete and illustrative sources, are by dancing masters Fabrizio Caroso on the left and Cesare Negri on the right. Caroso and Negri, and a handful of others, provided theoretical and practical information about dancing, including descriptions of steps, rules for their execution, instructions for several choreographies, and the music to accompany them. Caroso published Il Ballerino, the Dancer, in 1581, and Nobiltà di Dame, the Nobility of Ladies, in 1600. In both works, he gives rules for general deportment and the execution of steps, explicit step descriptions, and several complete choreographies with music in lute tablature. Nobiltà di Dame contains choreographies dedicated to different noble ladies from the courts of Italy and environs. Some of the dances from Il Ballerino are repeated here with slight changes or updates. Cesare Negri published Le Grati d'Amore, The Grace of Love, in 1602 and reissued it in 1604 as Nuove Invenzioni di Balli, the New Inventions of Dances. Negri provides much of the same type of information that Caroso does with regard to etiquette, step theory, and technique, and he includes dances of really the same style. His dances tend to be a little bit more complex than Caroso's, and he in fact includes a fun contest dance where dancers had to try to kick a tassel. These major Italian sources contain approximately 150 complete dances, both social and theatrical, which are representative of dance practices at the great courts of Italy in their time. The dances were intended for court ballrooms and performance spaces. And even in the ballroom, social dances appear to have been danced one couple or group at a time for the rest of all of the onlookers in the hall, thus incorporating a theatrical element to the ballroom, very presentational. Each dance was specifically choreographed, and it wasn't a matter of repeating the same step over and over like we would waltzing around a room. Specific step combinations went to specific parts of the music, and it all had to be memorized. Almost all dances are designed for a specific number of dancers, between 2 and 8, with just a few dances being for an unspecified number. And there are no solos, although there are solo portions of dances. There are no complete dances that are solos. And all of the dances are for mixed genders. The majority of dances carry the designation balletto, and this seems to be a generic term for dance, but it's most often applied to dances that have a rhythm and tempo changes, kind of like a mini suite. One section might be slow and somber, and one section might be heroic and march-like, and another one lively and complex, and another one rather simple and of moderate tempo. You get the idea. Some of these sections and other discrete dances bear the names of specific dance types. And although it's not always clear, the dance types tend to be characterized by musical rhythm and tempo, the number of dancers, and the step vocabulary. So we have gliding, sometimes processional couple dances like the bassa danza or the pavana, or the quicker pavaniglia with fancier footwork. There's the jumping and virtuosic gallarda with improvised solos for each partner, and also set or square dance type dances for multiple couples, which are sometimes contrapassos or passo e mezzos. As you see here on the bottom, this single guy is shown taking part in that game or competition dance where the object is to kick the tassel. Here he's trying it. But let's back up a bit and consider the background of these dances. These sources and the dances they contain are the legacy of a rich and well-established dance culture in Renaissance Italy that was rooted in humanistic ideals. From the late 15th century onward, Italian dance treatises reflected a world that celebrated human beauty and achievement, and of course learning and poetry and music and art, and renewed interest in classical culture. The ethos of the Renaissance is present even in the formats of the treatises, which commonly include flowery dedications to noble patrons and poems, and arguments about the importance of dance to society. The use of the body that the treatises advocate is also consistent with the Renaissance zeitgeist. The treatises specify an upright carriage of the body that mirrors not only the art of the time, but written recommendations for proper deportment and conduct. Castiglione's The Book of the Courtier and other works that comment on both comportment and deportment make it clear that the upright posture served to differentiate the noble from lower classes, who ostensibly had to bend and stoop in order to labor. For the noble, one's upright posture was a reflection of one's upright moral character. But this uprightness wasn't necessarily stiff or rigid. The treatises recommend the use of movement qualities that suggest a dynamism that the painters and sculptors captured by using a device known as contrapposto. This device answered the Renaissance-era desire to portray the moving human body in a more realistic manner than in the medieval period before it. It did this by showing the body's weight largely on one leg and the rest of the body counterposed, spiraling around a central axis. It kind of creates an S-curve that you can see in the body. And we see one shoulder higher, one hip higher, and often we see that one hip and the opposite shoulder are advancing. This practice, of course, reaches back to ancient Greece and Rome, as did much of the Renaissance sensibility and aesthetic. Our dance treatises also propose a subtle twisting like this, as steps undulate, rising and sinking. Now, an additional factor that governs both how people move and how we see the moving body is costume, ever a sign of the times. Let's look at the costume from the turn of the 17th century. And first of all, we have hats. Gentlemen frequently wore them for dancing and had to handle them, taking them off and replacing them, especially during bows. Shoulders and sleeves, let's see. Ladies and gentlemen generally had to contend with heavy, tightly constructed garments that inhibited the range of motion of their arms. So, in the dances, the arms were kept quiet at the sides, raised only for really holding hands, and even then, they were kept relatively low, or very gentle gestures when called for. Bodices and torsos, again, heavy layering and the use of corsets bolstered the upright training of the body, and no bending at the waist. Swords. Yes, gentlemen sometimes wore swords when dancing. They often kept one hand on their sword's hilt for control. I guess to not control your sword might have disastrous results. Thinking about the legs, ladies and gentlemen enjoyed relative freedom of their legs. Even though ladies had long skirts, their legs could move relatively freely underneath. It's just that we couldn't see them. That's part of the ladies' allure. So shoes, let's see. Most examples of shoes for both sexes were quite flat or had a very low heel. The real points of interest or focus, what we really notice most in this dancing, are the legs and footwork, particularly of the men. So not much motion with the arms, and we have an upright body that rises, sinks, and subtly twists, but there's no bending at the waist. These last images were later colorized. I think they're kind of fun. And here you can see a bit of the twisting of the body. So let's see some examples of these dances. In this first clip, we have short examples from a French group called Bato Toscana. Their first dance here is a pavone. See a bit of the torso twisting. And a much livelier gallarda. Balletto looks like it has a theatrical element to it. And this is likely a well-known dance called the saltarello. in the next clip, we have dancers Lieven Bert, Gloria Giordano, Hubert Azebrook, and Karin Modig with music ensemble La Cetra d'Orfeo, and they're doing a ballo called Bishiyamo Rosa, or the amorous snake, from Negri. Here we're going to be able to see some of the twisting in the torso, but we'll also see these changes in the rhythm where different dance types are coming in. So now I want to invite you to try some of these things with me. And first we'll do some basic steps from the repertoire, but then we'll combine them and do a little piece of a couple dance from Carosso's Nobiltà di Dame called Bassa Ducale. This is a couple dance, so if you have a partner at home, get them on their feet. Okay? I am going to be the gentleman today. I have pants on so you can see my legs and feet. So everybody remember, upright posture, no flailing of the arms. Gentlemen, if you're going to be a gentleman like I am today, you might want to control your sword from time to time with the hilt. Also, gentlemen will be on the left and the ladies on the right in any kind of a couple situation. Also, Baroque or Renaissance dances all begin on the left foot, a little factoid there. So the first thing we have, the first step we have is a bow, a riverenza. And what we're going to do is just push out the left foot, pull back the left foot so that the toe is kind of in line with the back, with the right heel. Weight on both feet, bend both knees, come up and replace that foot. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And from the side, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Easy enough, right? The next step we have very frequently follows the riverenza, and it's called a continenza. We have 2, continenze. So we have 1 to the left and 1 immediately following to the right. And what we have is a step to the side where we bend the knees and rock into the left hip. Then we lift up on both toes and sink. We do the same thing to the right. So we bend the knees, rock into the hip, rise on both toes, and sink. So we have 1 and 2, 3 and 4. So from the side, we have 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Now, this step gives us a really great opportunity to work with our own contrapposto, right? The switching, the kind of twisting of our upper body. We can really show off that twisting, and in this particular period, this technique is called pavone, which means to make like a peacock. You're showing yourself off. All of these steps, we can try it just plain, and then try it with a little bit of pavoneggiare. So we have riverenza and we have the continenze. So again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 riverenza, and then the 2 continenze. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the next step we can also practice our pavoneggiare, our peacocking, and it's just steps, just stepping. So if we step on the left foot, we can really think about pushing our weight into the hip and using the opposite shoulder. And we can walk around our space, no matter how big your living room is. So we're going to use steps, just plain steps, in this part of the dance. Okay? The next thing we have is another walking step, but it's a little different. This is called a seguito ordinario, an ordinary sequence. And what we're going to do is step up on the left, up on the right, and then come down on both feet. So we have up, up, flat, up, up, flat, up, up, flat, up, up, flat. And then when you get used to this, you can figure out how you might want to twist the body as you do it. Seguito ordinario. So after the seguito ordinario, we have one of my favorites, which is a trabocchetto. And it's a sideways spring onto the ball of one foot. So we'll start with our left. So we're going to spring to the left and bring the other leg straight, but with the other foot off the ground. So we have a trabocchetto one way, a trabocchetto the other way. Notice that when I'm up, both my knees are straight. This action commonly comes at the end of a compound step. It could be something like this. okay? Or we could have several going in one direction, or the other direction. Or, as in our dance, we can have them alternating. We have 1, 2, 3. And the faster that we talk about all these steps, it goes from being a trabocchetto to being a trab, 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 trab. So that'll be the cue. Next we have a spezzato. So with my left foot, I'm going to take a step on flat. Then I'm going to rise on both feet, bringing my back leg up behind the front, and then stepping forward on the flat. So we have step, rise, step, or flat, rise, flat, or step, together, step. However you like to call it, moving steps that can move you all around. And the rhythm is 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Okay? And then lastly, we have a seguito spezzato, which is a spezzato sequence, and we just have 2 regular steps or passi before 1 spezzato. So we have step, 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 together, step, 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 together, step, 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 together, step, 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 together, step. So there we have all of the steps that we need in order to do this little portion of the dance. And I'm going to ask Walter to help me. I am going to show you the gentleman's part of the dance. Yeah, here we go. I'll be doing the gentleman's part, so I will be on the left side. My lady partner will be right here, but we better back up for space's sake. We are both going to be doing, my partner, my fictitious partner and I will be doing the same thing with the same foot, but because we're in different positions, we will be circling around each other and changing places. So you kind of have to use your imagination to see somebody changing places with me. Was there anything else I wanted to tell you before I did this? No. The only other thing is that when I stop, you will hear in the music a really definite change in rhythm. And this is an example of how these dances go from one type of dance to the next type of dance. We're going to stop there, though, but it'll be an interesting thing to hear. So let's see. Walter, can you help? See how that change happens. So that's the dance. So let's do it together. But what we're going to do is switch front. I was performing for you, but now we're all going to perform to the front this way. It's much easier to follow from behind. So let's start. If you're a gentleman or playing one today, you can be on the left side. The lady would be on your other side. And we start with a riverenza. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 continenze, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? That much again. 1, 2, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then from here, we're going to take hands. And there's an optional gesture for either or both partners, whenever they want. Before you offer your partner your hand, you pretend to kiss it. And so we're both going to take right hands. My partner over here is going to extend her right hand too, and we're going to start with our left foot, and we're going to go step, 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 together, step. To change places, step, 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 together. Now we're going to face each other. I'm facing her. Now we have 3 trabochetti. My left foot is free, so that's the one I'm going to use. So we have 1, 2, 3. Hold. Then I'm going to go back the exact same way I came, but with my right foot and my left hand to my partner. Step, 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 together, step, 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 together, step, drop hands, and do 3 trabochetti. 1, 2. Great, so let's try that one more time. We have our riverenza. 1, 2, 3, 4. Continenze. 1, 2, 3, 4. Step, step, spezzato. Step, step, spezzato. Trab, trab, trab. Step, step, spezzato. Step, step, spezzato. Trab, trab, trab. Okay? Let's try that much with the music. Okay? Great. So now let's move on. From here, both of us are going to turn flat forward and take inside hands, and we're going to do 4 teensy weensy seguiti ordinari, and that's the one that goes up, up, flat, up, flat. Okay? So we have 4 of those. We're going to go up, flat, up, flat, up, flat, up, flat. Now, we're going to change places again, doing just 2 spezzati. So we're going to get there really quickly. Again, we're going to take right hands, and we're going to start with the left foot. So we have spezzato, spezzato. We're not going to turn to face each other right now. We're going to make 2 more spezzati on our outside. Make a circle to face. Spezzato, spezzato. And here we have, guess what? 3 trabochetti. Trab, trab, trab. We're going to do the same thing to the other side, taking the other hand and starting with the right foot. So we have spezzato, spezzato to change places. But now we're going to make a circle around ourselves. Spezzato, spezzato to face, trab, trab, trab. Okay? And really now, that's the whole dance. So let's try it all with the music. Continenza. Step, step, spezzato. make sure we have it in our bodies. Partner a nice little bow. Great, thanks for trying that with me. So, how will we bring dance to our opera production? Well, the first performance of Monteverdi's L'Orfeo was a court production in Mantua. We can assume then that some of these same court dance principles from these sources that we're discussing were in play. It's even possible that some members of the court took part in the dancing, which was customary. But there's room in L'Orfeo for less refined dancing too. I would be remiss not to mention other genres of dance in Italy at the turn of the century, but these are dance practices that were not documented in instructional treatises. We have acrobatic dancing seen largely in outdoor street theater of the Commedia dell'arte, stock characters who entertained in funny costumes with dancing and tumbling tricks. And also, of course, just the plain old common people's folk dances. You can see that the clothes and the postures are a little bit different in style than what we were working with. But the story of L'Orfeo features shepherds and nymphs as well as courtly gods and goddesses. So our production's director will guide us as to what kinds of dances we integrate. And I invite you to join us this summer for the fun. August 26th, 7th, and 8th at the Hart Theater at the Jewish Community Center in Rochester.
Thanks so much, Peggy. Now I'm going to take a look and see if there are any questions. I'm tired from dancing, but let's take a look and see what the questions are. Somebody would like to know what that ensemble was playing the Tedesca.
Oh, that ensemble is called Capriccio Stravagante Renaissance Orchestra.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure you can find them on YouTube. Thanks for that.
Yes.
So here's a very practical question from Sue. She comments, gorgeous costumes and very lively dancing about the videos. She asks, how did they keep from sweating through and ruining the clothes?
I'm sure they didn't keep from sweating through. I'm sure they did sweat a lot in these clothes, and they probably weren't terribly easy to wash. However, if you lived in a court, you probably had servants who helped you do those kinds of things and took care of your clothes as best they could. Yeah. It's a great question, and it's one that we think about a lot, right? I mean,
especially as we're about to put on an opera and have to deal with the costumes
right.
and several performances and
Right.
rehearsals. So, okay. Walter had a fun question as well about the video that had people dancing and stamping, and he said he heard a lot of thumping sounds. Did they deliberately have shoes designed to go clank, like tap shoes? Or I thought maybe that was from the orchestra, but not sure.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that group was doing, but there is a famous Renaissance dance, and that was what they were doing. Part of what they were doing was a canario, which is known for percussive footwork. And it's the only Renaissance dance that we know of that it was okay to really stamp your feet. Otherwise, if you did it in a pavone, say, it would have been unseemly to do it in many dances. But in a canario, you could stamp, and that was kind of the object of the canario. Now, when I talked about costume before, I talked about shoes and said that shoes were basically flat or had very low heels. That's true pretty much. But there are some historians and clothing historians and dance historians who assume that people sometimes wore a shoe that is called, the name escapes me. They're like a platform shoe that you slide your feet into. Chopin, that's what they're called, chopins. And they tended to be made out of wood, and they would have clanked like crazy. But I really doubt they did a whole lot of dancing in those. If anything, I'm sure they did more glidey kinds of dances. You could never galliard in something like platform shoes.
Without breaking your ankle.
Right.
Peggy, I have a question. Could you say a little bit more about the differences between social dance and theatrical dance? And I'm curious about the role of women in theatrical dancing at the time, if we know anything about that. We certainly know that there were women singers in the original production of Orfeo, but what about dancers?
Because the first production was in the court of Mantua, I would assume that people from the court participated in the dancing for the opera. And while women did not, in many countries of Europe, did not dance on a public stage, they did dance in court stages. So they could dance kind of for other courtly people, but it was unseemly for women to dance for the public. So let's talk about social versus theatrical dancing. Really, a lot of the social dancing that we see is very theatrical. It's very presentational. Very often in a ballroom, people danced one group or couple at a time for the rest of the people there, as the other people were their audience. So the social dancing is really very theatrical. However, there is another kind of theatrical dancing that was done more often by dancing masters, and that would have been probably more virtuosic and maybe a little bit more like the commedia dell'arte, tumbling, acrobatic, and just more virtuosic kind of dance moves than your ordinary court person could have done. Although we say things like that and we think, well, the ordinary court person probably danced as well as you or me, any person on the street. It's not true, though, when you stop and think that in courts, dancing was considered to be so necessary that people studied dance with a dancing master daily, if need be. And this was a real part of their lives. So they were probably far better dancers than the average Joe among us today.
Yeah, I've read comments that ridicule people because they couldn't dance,
Right.
people at court.
Right.
So it was
This
obviously
kind of reaches its zenith in the Baroque period, kind of beyond this period. But in, say, the French court, there are lots of accounts of people being disgraced because they couldn't dance well enough, and they had to leave court, actually, because of their lack of dancing. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Shunned.
Mhm. See, it's always good to be a good dancer.
Practice. Watch this video again, everybody, and practice. um, Peggy, when you are dancing to live music, I'm wondering what you listen to and what you're going to think. Well, that's two questions. That what do you listen for? What do you want the musicians to do when you're dancing to music? And the second part of the question is, what are you going to look for in Orfeo to set dance to?
Well, as a dancer, I think one of the things that we think about and we search for in the music is rhythm and evenness of rhythm. And this is one of the things that we talk about a lot in early music, because rhythms in early music, especially in Baroque music, tend to be very, very even. But when musicians take liberties and maybe slow down in the middle of it or speed up, and the dancer doesn't know, there's no way to react. So we look for rhythm, but we also look for a consistency in that rhythm to keep it at the same tempo throughout, right? The rhythm. What will I look for in L'Orfeo? The first thing I'm looking at in the score are the pieces that seem to be very courtly, very much like these pavanas and bassadanzas that we've worked with today, and gallardas. Some dances are very identifiable by their rhythm, and that can give us some clues. So that'll be the first thing to work with. But then the other thing is, some of the dances just sound like a kind of folk festival. They don't really sound like they belong in a court. They sound like they belong in a town square with people dancing around a pole or something like that. You know, just having fun and not complex footwork. But just very what we might think of rustic dancing. So how do those two courtly versus non-courtly kinds of worlds come together in L'Orfeo? I think that's what we'll be looking at.
And that's actually a theme of the story as well. So,
right.
So that will be interesting. And it's, I think, a good thing to point out how closely you will have to work with the music director, Michael Beatty, on things like tempo and steadiness of rhythm.
Exactly.
And having played for dancers, I know that's not always the easiest thing. And getting the tempos right.
To be honest, though, most musicians who are well versed in early music get this. They get that you have to kind of keep the same rhythm, or you decide with the dancer what else you're going to do, but you just kind of can't do something unilaterally and expect somebody to be able to follow it with choreography that's already set.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I'm just taking a quick look here.
One of the things that I didn't say in my talk, but you may have noticed, is that in this dancing, we don't have a lot of like turnout of the legs and feet. And this is actually one of the things that really more designates Baroque dancing. So later on in the 17th century, we see that developing throughout Europe. The idea that your legs and feet are turned out, and this moves us closer to what we think of now in classical ballet as turnout.
Okay, so people will have a lot to look for when they see our dancers on the stage this summer.
Yeah.
So great. Well, we're just about out of time. I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. And we're going to leave this up so you can come back to this link and watch it again and practice your dancing with Peggy. And just a reminder that our opera is this summer. You can go to our website and get information about it. An unabashed appeal here for donations if you liked this presentation to support our production. Opera is really expensive, but we're almost there and we're really looking forward to putting on a wonderful show. So thank you so much also to Walter Freeman, who did all the rather complicated tech for today. We couldn't do it without him. So thanks, everybody. We hope to see you soon at a live concert. And thank you very much, Peggy, for sharing your expertise and your liveliness with us. Take care and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.